Hey everybody, it's Rick Carter, CNF Worldwide, Delmarva Craft. Usually we do podcasts and stuff with breweries and wineries and, various kinds of small businesses, but we decided that with a lot of stuff that's going on in our country now and division and people not getting along, that it was time to maybe do something a little different. So we're going to call this podcast Two Guys on a Plane, because I'm here with my friend Lester Overton. Lester, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Rick. Good to see you again.
So I'm going to get into our backstory here first, and then we'll maybe get into the meat and talk about some issues in our world today. But you're saying, okay, you guys are sitting here in a brewery. We want to thank Cult Classic Brewing on Kent Island here in Maryland for letting us use their studio. So Two Guys on a Plane comes to you from Two Guys in a Brewery. Lester and I met like 5 years ago on a flight to Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Exactly. Yep.
And during that flight, Lester and I bonded rapidly over a mutual love of football.
That was it. Yep.
And Lester is an assistant coach at Wise High School down PG County, perennial state powerhouse. It may have steamrolled the school years sometime in the past few years.
Yeah, trying to continue that.
Just I went to a high school that was on the other side, a lot of meetings like that, but we won't go into that. But Lester and I had a really, really good conversation about, race and relations and politics and stuff in the United States. And what really struck me that day was that a lot of times when you talk to somebody you don't really know, as soon as you get into certain areas, people kind of get quiet, or they're like, "Excuse me, I got to go." Lester just plowed right ahead, man. He knows who he is. He knows what he thinks, and he had thought, "Let's do it, man." So I was really taken with how honest and forthright and willing to share it you were, man. And I want to tell you too, really thank you for coming out here today and agreeing to do this and have it recorded for a podcast and video, because we live in an age where, like, if you say one wrong word, like, people come out of woodwork that you don't know, that you're never going to meet, and they want to tell the rest of the world that you're an evil man and you're going to be canceled, and Lester's going to you're going to lose his job, and he's going to have to be put out in the pasture somewhere and never be heard from again. So it takes a certain amount of courage to sit down and go, let's talk about it.
Right, yep. And I appreciate you having me come out too.
Yeah. So you and I talked, and we had another chat on Zoom a couple weeks ago, and we're like, be the change that you want to see. So instead of people sitting behind a screen sniping at each other and calling each other names, we're like, sit down and have a conversation face to face, and maybe we do some good, maybe nobody cares. Right. But we're here and we're trying. So we're going to start from there.
Exactly.
So to get into the meat of this thing, a little bit of background first. And I pulled up your info, Lester. So Lester, you correct me if any of this thing is wrong, Lester.
Right.
You work for the Department of the Navy as a program manager.
That's correct.
And you've been there for a long time. I won't say how long. I won't give away your age.
Thank you.
You went to Salisbury State and studied computer programming.
Correct.
So also tech guy.
Yep.
And you then got a master's at the University of Maryland University Colleges in Management Information Systems.
Correct.
So the bottom line is, you've got a black man and a white man. We both do computer stuff. We both love football.
Exactly.
My resume is not as impressive as Lester's. I got an Associate of Arts degree in data processing.
Which is still great.
From Cecil Community College in Northeast Maryland. Go Seahawks.
I've heard of that community college before. So.
Way up there. They didn't have a football team. I played soccer there a long time ago. So we had our conversation. I think it kind of started talking about football, but predominantly your team, we're talking about African-American young men and the mentorship you guys provide, and our conversation led into some of the things that we see in our society. And then, so people were saying, wait a minute, back up, Rick. You guys been on a plane 5 years ago. How are you talking to them? Well, Lester pinged me next day and friend on Facebook. I'm like, sure. So in the intervening years, whenever something kind of, weird happened, like a cop say, way to go football team, but be like, I get a message say, Brother Rick, what do you think about this?
Right, yeah, exactly.
And we found out that even though there are some people in this country who would say, you guys should hate each other, and you should, found out a lot of times we thought almost exactly the same thing about some stuff that was going on.
Exactly. Yep.
So if we do nothing more than remove some preconceptions about how black guys and white guys and our races in general think about things, we'd do some good.
Exactly.
So I want to dive in with one specific incident. We talked about this when we Zoomed a couple weeks ago. I think this is a good place to start. There was a gentleman in Atlanta last year who I don't know, I never
Oh,
saw
the drive.
whether his intoxication level was or anything, but he passed out at a Wendy's drive-through. And that whole situation escalated. The police were called, they came, there was altercation. If I remember correctly, the guy got his hands on the cop's tasers, and eventually
Right.
he was shot to death.
Right, he ran after that and they got shot.
And then you messaged me, you go, what do you think of this? And our exchange was, how did a guy passing out at a drive-through escalate to the point where a man lost his life?
Exactly.
So what are your thoughts on how that could have been handled differently?
The way I look at it is like, and you know, first of all, nobody should lose their life over like falling asleep in the drive-throughs. You know what I'm saying?
Agreed.
So the way I look at it is that even if, and like you said, we talked about this in the Zoom, even if the guy got out of his car and ran like he did, there was no reason to even chase him because he left his car.
Right.
So with his car being there, the easiest thing to do was to run his license and go arrest him because most likely he ran home.
Right.
You know, so it's just, I think this a lot of times that, I think it can go further than that. I think the training for the police now, because of where we are in society, I think maybe it needs to be more different type of training for the officers, because all officers are not bad.
No.
You know what I mean? So, but why these guys decided to change, I don't know if it's because of the environment. You know, it's in Atlanta, my son went to school down there, and that's the city, you know, quote, certain areas are supposed to be, you know, like rough. So I don't know if they thought maybe he had a gun. He didn't have a gun, but I just think the best way to do it was to de-escalate the situation when he tried to grab or whatever, and just, you know, get him later.
So to jump on a couple points, his car was still at the drive-through. You had the car. You got your light, the tags on the car. You're going to be able to trace the car to an address attached to a person.
Right.
So this de-escalate the situation and chase him later. And I'll say that neither you and I are cops. We've never been in the heat of a situation, but I think I've got enough sense to go chill. But then you just said something about the gun. If he had a gun, he was running away.
Right. He was gone.
If he pulled a gun and he's pointing at a police officer,
Right. Different story.
all bets are off.
Exactly.
But he wasn't. He ran away.
He ran.
And so we saw that as situation exactly the same. We both messaged back going, yeah. And again, we're not here to bash the police.
Right.
But it became a big part of the whole, you know, black outrage in 2020. And you know, if you're shooting people in the back, yeah, somebody's got a right to be outraged.
Right.
But so, and then we talked before, so I'm like, and I'm going to try not to, you know, get lost in details of certain stuff, but the bigger issue to me is the backlash against like the George Floyd incident and Breonna Taylor and things like that just led to a whole lot of issues that I thought about. It's like the biggest one to me is did we so demonize like all police?
Right, exactly.
And like you said, they're not all bad.
Not all bad.
That I'm concerned now, like what kind of people are we going to get to be police, and we're only going to be able to get people that are going to make the problem worse.
Yep, and I remember the Zoom. I you know, not going to say names or anything like that, but I told you I have some people that I know that have become officers, and I've known their background because, and these are guys that I might have, you know, dealt with when they were younger. So I've seen them go from teenage to having to get a job, and knowing the backgrounds that they chose, like maybe after high school or college, and now I look and I see that they're police and sheriffs. It just makes me wonder, like what kind of background checks are being done, and it doesn't matter race to me. Is white, black, Chinese, Indian, whatever. That background check should be looking at all of that, because I think that's part of, like you're saying, like some of these police now might have grew up in those type of areas and have that mindset, you know, and now they're cops. So now to me they're just more of a glorified, you know, I guess evil person, if you want to call them.
And then tell me this, and I'll come back a little bit later and like delve into what it's like to grow up in certain neighborhoods. But when you're from that neighborhood, like you, and you know these people, you know their backgrounds. If you know them well enough to go, well, he may be a cop now, but he's still the same guy. He hadn't changed.
Exactly.
What kind of trust or lack of trust does that create in the neighborhood as far as the police go?
Exactly. Because that does only mean I'm not the only one that knows the background. The neighborhood he grew up in knows his background. So now, like you're saying, it's like if this cop comes, they're going, you know, they're thinking in their mindset is like, well, is he like this this one that I know shouldn't be a cop, or is he not? So that causes a reaction from everybody now to make all police in one group.
Yeah.
And
So
I don't think that's fair, because I have other friends that are police that are like, even said to me, hey, I asked to be off the streets because I don't want to be in that situation, so I asked to go put me at the desk. You know,
so that you grew up in PG County, and for anybody that sees this who doesn't know where Oxon Hill is, or Suitland, home of Kevin Durant, you know, we're talking about a primary black area right outside of D.C. I, on the other hand, grew up in a small town. I was born in Maryland, but was raised in a small town in Pennsylvania. And as we talked before, I mean, it was a unique small town. We had a lot of people with Hispanic background because it's a big mushroom growing area, a lot of migrant workers. We had an unusually high number of African Americans in this small Pennsylvania town because Lincoln University was there, the oldest primarily black college in the United States. So we were around that, but it was small town. It was pretty peaceful for the most part. And what I'm getting to is, like, I have friends to this day, you know, 40 years after I moved away from that town, who will say online and social media, well, what's the problem? If you just do what the police tell you, everything's going to be fine.
Right.
And I go,
it's not true. Not always true.
so, and I'll give you a couple examples, and then you can expound on it way better than I can. So, we've lived in Baltimore for a lot of years. Two of my kids grew up in the city there, and he's tipping his hat back there.
Oh,
But we had, like, the most glaring instance, the Baltimore Gun Trace Task Force, where you had cops trading guns and drugs and stuff with the police department crew up in Philly and this kind of stuff going on. We had a couple of cops arrested selling drugs from the trunk of their car in the police station parking lot. We had cops in Baltimore City who were running a prostitution ring. We had the prison there in Baltimore, Supermax, essentially being run by the inmates. And the gang leaders that were in the prison calling out hits on people on the street from inside the prison. We had prison guards getting impregnated by inmates. And then you've got the district attorney and the mayor and the governor telling people in the community, tell the police we can't.
Right.
So if you're living in the community and you know all of this, Lester, you talking?
Right. No, because you become one of those missing because of how crooked they are within. Yeah. I mean, you can watch TV shows now, like I can't think of some of them, but they'll have The Wire just gave a nice. It's old, but it gave a nice thing of how what you just talked about was in the city, and how many years ago was that? You know what I'm saying? So you just like, and again, so if you know that, right, it's almost like any cop that pulls. I mean, it's like you driving and you see in your mirror a cop. He ain't got his sirens on yet, but you automatically go into a mode like, I don't want to get put over because I don't know what's going to happen, you know. So it just causes you to become defensive.
Right. So there was a family in Baltimore. I think it was doing when Martin O'Malley was the mayor there, and the mother just got tired of the gang activity in her neighborhood. Her entire family was murdered. They burned the house down with all of them in it.
Right.
And after the mayor had said, "Oh, we're gonna take care of you," they couldn't protect them.
Couldn't even protect them after that. Right.
And it reached a point where, and some police officers are going to hate me for what I'm about to say, but in a city like Baltimore, people on the streets, and I'm going to say, not just black people, but white people of less economic means living in certain neighborhoods, they would say to you, "Cops just another gang, and the law's on their side. You can't mess with them."
I've heard that before.
And so, what can you tell people who may have come from a much more fortunate background, what's it like living in neighborhoods like that and growing up in a neighborhood like that? I mean, how does a 10-year-old young African American male in a poor part of a major American city where you can't trust the police and don't see how does that young man look at his future?
To me, and again, like it's like so where I grew up at, like you say, I was on the outskirts, but I was like 5 miles still out, so I still saw all that. But you could, just the difference from even where I grew up at to, I had some friends that lived right across the line. It was totally different, and it was only a 2 or 3 mile difference. And it's exactly what you said, because, you know, for a 10-year-old to try to get him out of that mindset, that's what he sees every day and knows every day, it's going to be hard to get him to see it differently. And even if he does see it different, or gets to a point where he can start seeing it different, right? It's still going to be in him that at any given moment, any given situation that comes to him or her that reverts them back to that, they're going to react that way. And the prime example to me is like a lot of these athletes. A lot of the basketball athletes and football athletes, they come from environments like that. And now they come out and they automatically say to them, okay, you got money now, right? Stop acting like that. But they only 20, 21 years old. So they're only 3 or 4 years removed from that. The only thing that happened was you just glorified them now as that same person with more money. So it's like, how do you get them to get that mindset? You just got to hope that when they get out and they get around other people, that they have a like mind, and they get close enough or look up to them enough to hear what they're saying. Because a lot of times you can say something to them. Because even like now with coaching, it's like you know, like even coaching at Wise, it's predominantly black, but I coached at Bladensburg, and the environment of the kids that come and are playing for you, even within that 10-mile radius is totally different, because the ones that at Bladensburg, they growing up in apartments, they single families. The ones at Wise, a lot of them have two-parent homes and things like that. So even with that, you can see the difference where you can say something quicker to a kid at Wise, and they'll kind of take to it a little quicker, even though they're kind of in a STEM environment, but they're not fully living in that environment. So a kid at Bladensburg, you have to work harder to try to get them. And fortunate enough that, you know, when you get a group of individuals that are working with them, to me, you have to do it the way you get by that. What your question is you get into an environment like that where this kid wants something. They want to play football. They may not want to go to school yet or class and that kind of stuff, but they want to play football. So what I do is, the way I get to them is I first build that relationship. This is my dad told me about how I get into coaching. My dad said, don't coach them just to teach them X's and O's, because you're going to have to be a father, a mentor, a brother, a cousin, a friend, and you might have to be a coach, but you got to get to know each individual one. And once you get to know them and they build trust in you, that's how you get to them, because then they start looking up to you, and then you try to bring them around other environments and things like that they're not used to, that they haven't seen before. And once they see it, it kind of opens their eyes up, and you get them in that young enough age, but a lot of them don't get that.
Because, and I interject here, I'm going way back into my personal experience, because now, this is the white guy talking now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I grew up in a 2-parent household, but I had 2 parents, neither of whom graduated from high school. My father, I think, was 20. My mother was 16 when they got married.
Wow.
By the time my mother was 20, she had 4 kids.
Wow.
And my father's working like 3 jobs
Right.
just to pay the bills and put food in everybody's
Right.
mouth. And when my mother eventually went to work, she worked as a domestic, man. She's cleaning people's houses and this kind of stuff. So you're going to school, looking at kids in the same class with you, knowing that your mother's somewhere today scrubbing their toilet.
Right.
That's where you're coming from.
Right.
And so basically, when you got 2 people, and I'm not here to tear my parents down. That's a whole other. That's a subject of a totally separate podcast.
Right.
But you're talking about 2 really young people, babies having babies, and not prepared to be parents. So I'm trying to step into the minds of some of these young men, because when I was a teenager, when I was a teenage kid playing high school football, I remember it vividly. Like every summer, like August, the local newspaper would come out with like the football preview, and they had like all the kids on the varsity team, and they had under my name. The coach said, "He's quiet, but you know when he hits you."
Right.
Because I was angry. I was an angry young man,
Right.
and being on a football field or a practice,
With your opportunity to get that out.
I could drop somebody's ass, and I didn't have to worry about getting arrested for it.
Nothing.
And I got threw out of a game my senior varsity. I got in a fight with the star player on the other team. I was an angry young man.
Right,
I was frustrated about life and how it worked.
Exactly.
And that was a place to take it out. And I was very undisciplined, but very smart. Thought I knew better than everybody else. I wouldn't go listen to Coach Over. Just screw him, man. What you gonna tell me? So do you see a lot of that in your coaching?
Yeah, I'll give you a prime example. It was a young man at Bladensburg, and he had eventually, prior to me getting there, he had gotten put out because of fights. So I was like, well, I mean, fights. I mean, like, how many fights was he getting in? Somebody told me just Google Bladensburg fights. No name, no nothing. Wow. I Googled Bladensburg fights. Every fight I saw, he was in. So I see why he got kicked out. So the next year, a coach who lived in that neighborhood and knew a lot of the kids, he knew him. So he was like, hey, he wants to come back. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, can I meet him? You know, so he came up, met him, we talked, and when we talked, he didn't seem like a violent type of young man at all. It was just, like you said, you know, he was angry, you know, so the example of what you're talking about, and it's like you talk about how you got in a fight and got kicked out, so little by little, I was able to build a relationship with him, and I was trying to talk to him about him controlling his anger on the field. In between the whistle, hit him as hard as you want, no punching or nothing, but you can tear him up, okay? And then you play linebacker, so you can hit people as hard as you want. You know what I mean? So it was one game we were playing, Parkdale, and I saw where he was like, this guy kept kind of like cheap shopping. And I saw where he was like, he was kind of like getting back at him a little bit. So before he did it, we came out to the sideline. I said, give me your helmet. He was like, well, I said, just give me your helmet. So he gave me his helmet. So he went back up for defense. He came to get his helmet. I said, no, you just go sit down and relax for a little while. So naturally, he was angry. So we had a little exchange. I said, well, you can get as mad as you want. You can leave. Right? So he went and sat down. About 2 series later, he came back and he said, Coach, I think I know what you're doing. Like that. I said, are you sure? And he was like, yes. I said, okay, we'll talk about it after the game. So I gave him his helmet back. He went out there. After the game, we talked. And then he said to me, he said, I know. He said, you saw me get ready to lose my anger. He said, you wanted me to learn how to control it. And after that, he was pretty much the rest of the season, you know. Yeah. So, but yeah, prime example.
See, so and you led right to the point is young white kid, young black kid.
Right.
Same stuff.
Same
stuff.
Same thing.
And I go back. I just made me think of something way back. Because when I was like, I don't know, 9th grade, we went away to the only year that we did this. We went away to a football camp, like Bucks County up above Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And we were sharing this camp in the like they said the mountains. It was more like big hills.
Right.
But it was us, and there's another school, and they no longer exist. They've been merged into like a regional high school, but it's called Darby Township.
Okay.
Which wasn't in Philly, but they butted right up against Philly.
Yeah.
98% of the kids in school were African American. So, not like you just come schools you'd find in PG County.
Right.
So we went to football camp with these guys. We're a bunch of their team. I think they had 100 guys on the team, and there was literally there was one white guy.
Right.
Our team, I think we might have had 60 guys on the team, and there's literally 3 black guys.
Right.
You talk about like these two images.
Total opposites, right?
They're sharing camp, and then we literally like this after like the first 3 days of practices. 4th day there was a scrimmage between the 2 teams. Turned into a brawl.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Like the freshmen were all like, oh, but we were too scared to rather go play.
Right.
And I'll never forget this. Like the coach of Darby Township was this huge black. He's a mountain of a man. He's just grabbing players from both piles, just grabbing by the scruff of the neck and throwing them off. And I'm going, respect that guy. Don't mess with that guy. But you know. And our coach got really mad at us so much that he like got in his car and drove off and stuff like that. Blah 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 blah. And we got the hard lecture about discipline. You're here to learn to be men and play. You're not here to jump in fights with these guys. Blah blah blah. And to be fair to like our guys, it wasn't a racial fight.
Right.
We were going to fight with anybody we played against. It
didn't matter. Right.
We were from like a not an affluent rural area, and a lot of people on the team I played on. We had a lot of frustration with life and. You know, it's that prideful don't disrespect me, and it's just like you're young, your hormones take over, and you're just wailing away on each other, right? But then, so we got all that out of our systems, right? And the next day, the coach said, "Another fight, you're all getting in the bus, we're going home,
right? And
we're going to cancel the season."
And you don't want that.
We don't want that,
right?
But and then what I'm coming back to a point is how similar we all are. So the freshman, you're like the pledges at the Naval Academy
Right.
or something, man. You get dumped on. So like you got to serve the dinner to the upperclassmen before you can eat.
Yep.
You got to stay after and wash the dishes, right? And we had a shared mess hall, so you have all the Darby Township guys on one side, we're all sitting on the other side. And then they made us put on a show, so we get to get up there and the freshman guys sing songs and do stupid stuff, and all the upperclassmen on both sides we're all laughing at us.
Right.
And it's like, but it's like bonding.
Right.
So
Exactly.
but then after the meals, like there'd be like a half a dozen freshmen from our high school and half a dozen from their high school. We had to like wash dishes and put everything away. And I'll say this in front of everybody. And all of us ended up out behind the mess hall after that. We're all smoking weed together.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So don't sit out there in suburbia and go, oh, those kids in the seat.
Right.
We're doing tough. We're all out there. And guess what? One of our guys had the best weed. I'm just saying.
Right.
So and the whole point of that discussion is it's the same. It's
right.
the same.
Right.
It's the same.
Right. And see, and to piggyback on that, it's like, I think that you had said something like earlier, like as far as like my background, whatever your background, where you grew up, but the way you grew up, right? So somebody not knowing you, right, just a black person, would see you and just say, oh, look at this white man.
Yeah.
You're just like the rest of them,
Yeah.
right? Not knowing anything about how your background is, and for me, like you saying on the plane, right? I was like, because the way I am, it's like I didn't shut that door and say, man, why this white man talking to me right now? You know what I'm saying? I wasn't like, can I move my seat?
My kids say that to me.
Oh,
Wait, man, why are you talking to me?
So, but I allowed the door to be open to see how you were, right? And now, and that conversation, and then over time, and us talking and vibing like we're doing, I learned that my skin didn't make us any different.
And neither one was sitting there waiting to judge the other person.
Exactly.
Oh, you said it's gotcha.
Exactly.
Because I don't care who you are. I don't care, and it goes for the people sitting at this table. None of us knows as much as we think we know. None of us has lived everywhere. None of us has experienced everything. So none of us gets to put the bullet in the gun and shoot everybody else down.
Right.
Because you don't know.
Right.
So, and I'll go first on this question if you want me to. But I say this. So you just kind of referred to, oh, he's just another white guy. So what's the stereotype? We're going to get into stuff going to make people uneasy now. So as a black person, somebody says, oh, it's just another white guy. What does that mean?
Like, see, to me, it's funny because, well, not funny, but like, if you look at, like, when they say it's another white guy, I think they're putting every white person in one basket and saying they're all the same, right? Doesn't matter how you look, doesn't matter if you have hair, don't have hair, right? Doesn't matter if you got a beard, you're clean cut, you wear a suit all the time, tie, whatever. No matter what, they still are like, here is another white guy. Because what they automatically think is that how the world is and how they think that particular race thinks, they think all of them think the same. So it goes back to like the cops, right? Like at the Capitol, that those cops, to me, a lot of my friends would get mad at me because I was, and you see it on Facebook, some of my friends would be like, why are you still talking to them? Why are you doing this? You can tell they're racist, you can tell this, that, but they don't know you like I know you, right? Not just saying you, but you, and I have some other friends that I went to Salisbury with that, some of the things they say sound kind of like, okay, well, maybe, but that doesn't mean that they are. That's just their thought process, what they think. And I just feel like that, because sometimes I talk to my son, it's not about like the race thing, but things in the world, like I was saying earlier to you guys that he's going to school for audio engineering, but when it comes to him like trying to get a job, he'll say, well, they all think that way, and what he's talking about is the different studios that he's trying to get into, and I try to tell him, no, they're not all the same. So you can't group, you can't say because that's an audio engineering, that's a studio, all studios think the same way. One studio may look at your resume and say, oh no, he ain't good enough. But this other one over here is going to say, oh yeah, I like him. And to me, it's the same thing like with race. But some people just put all race into one. It's even with African Americans, a lot of times, like when I worked when I first got down to the Navy Yard, it wasn't like it is now at all. It was like straight, DC, everything. And a lot of my coworkers that When we got down there, they was like, I'm not going down there. If I can't park on the base, I'm not parking, here. So I was trying to, tell them, but they weren't racist. They just weren't used to that environment. So I wouldn't say, to me, I wouldn't say, here comes another white guy, thinking, because some thought different, some thought different ways. So, but it's an interesting comment.
But from the white side, there's definitely a segment, and again, I'm not going to say it all white people, but there's a segment of white people that if they're walking down the street and they're not used to seeing a black guy in that neighborhood and they see Lester, the lady's going to hold her purse a little bit tighter.
Right.
There's a preconception that, black people given the opportunity, they're going to try to rob me.
Right.
They're going to try to take stuff from me. They're going to beat me up and take my car. They're going to take my purse. They're going to do that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I'll give you an example. Because I lived in a place in Key West for about 5.5 years. We had a house down there, and I bought this house because they got a really great price on it. Because it's after the whole real estate market collapse and stuff like that, the price was way down, and it just happened to be in a gated community at a golf course, the only golf course down there.
Right.
Well, my neighbor 2 doors over was a gay couple, and the one guy, I'll just use his first name, Edwin's a black guy. And we became friends. Him and I both got served on the board of the homeowners association for a couple of years. And he's like, man, when I first moved here, he said 3 or 4 times, I'm just walking through the neighborhood, walking the dog, and people walk up to me and go, can I help you?
Right.
And so I say, well, what's that mean?
Right.
Well, implied is, why are you here? Because you're not white.
Right.
Why are you in this neighborhood here? We're down in the Florida Keys,
right.
we trying to get the
away.
mystical, Key West, in a golf course community. There's a black man here. Can I help you?
Right.
And he took a while. I think it pissed me off more, pissed him off, to tell you the truth. Because I'm like, seriously, this shit's still going on.
Still in 20.
No way a black man could have a job and a career and earn money and afford to buy a house and live in your neighborhood.
Right.
And my blood's boiling sitting here thinking about it 5 years later. So are there still white people out there like that? Oh, fuck yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They're still out there. And I hope you watch this.
Yeah.
Because you're the problem.
Because
you can't see the gesture our producer's making off mic, but I wish you could see it.
Yeah.
So, and you've worked for the Department of the Navy for a long time as a program manager, good living, good job, stuff like that. But you and I had a little conversation on the Zoom a couple weeks ago about white privilege. If you remember the story you told to me about the time then, because and I'll come back to some other points after that, but some people say white privilege is, oh well, if your skin is white, you automatically have all these advantages over other people. And I said to you, what does it mean to you? And then you told me a story.
I gave an example, the story about my job, and it was a friend of mine, and me and him were good friends. His name was TK, he's a white guy, and we were the same age, and we were coming in at the same time. He had just started there probably about maybe 3 or 4 months before I did. And at the time, I was finishing up at Salisbury, so I came in. I didn't know what he was making yet or anything. I just know we were good. We were friendly, both computer programmers at the time, and I was told that I had to. I'd already been working there as an intern, so they accounted into my background. But then all of a sudden, I was told that I had to take some tests to see where I would line up at as far as my grade scale goes. So at the time, I'm thinking, well, maybe that's normal. You know what I'm saying? Still got let me see what happens. So I took the test and I graded in at a certain level, but then they still bumped me back 2 levels back, right? So in a conversation with him at lunch one day, because again we were friends, I started talking about it. And he was like, I told him, he said, "For real, you had to do that?" So I'm looking kind of funny, like, "What you didn't?" And he was like, "No, they just hired me and put me in GS11, started me at GS5."
What was the pay difference between these two?
Oh, big difference. At that time, I think GS5 was $24,000 a year, and 11 was like almost 50. So it's about 25,000.
So you almost double the pay.
Almost double the pay.
And he didn't have to take the test.
He didn't have to take the test, and he didn't even finish graduate. He didn't even have a degree at the time. He didn't even graduate.
So he didn't even finish his 4-year bachelor's degree. You had your degree.
I had my degree.
So let's recap, folks. Had a degree, had to take tests, got slotted in 6 levels behind the guy that didn't have a degree, didn't have to take tests.
Exactly. Yep.
And how angry were you?
I was very angry. I was very angry because
I would be too.
in my mind, I'm like, first of all, you told me I had to take the test, and I graded here, so I should have been there, and you still put me back, put me back to level. Then the fact that I had a degree, and I've always been told, go get your degree, you'll be taken care of when you get to where you're going. And not only that, I had already put in a year and a half with the company, so they knew me. So I right then and there, I knew it wasn't a decision like a government process type thing. I knew it was something else.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was highly upset.
I don't blame you. I'm upset for you. And then so people who want to talk down that anger amongst some people in the black community about that. How would you feel if it happened to you? Mm-hmm. I'd be pissed.
Right.
I'd straight up walk out.
Mm-hmm.
I said, screw you.
Mm-hmm.
Not working. That's how it works.
Right.
Because then to broaden it out is to me that's a kind of oppression.
Mm-hmm.
You're being stepped on because of no doubt how you look.
How I look. Mm-hmm.
But then what I want people to understand too is it's not just a black thing.
It's not.
It's a wealth thing.
Exactly.
It's a power thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because growing up, and as I described where I came from,
Mm-hmm.
I was a poor white kid. Parents worked really hard
Exactly.
to provide a basic home and meals and stuff like that. But there were no invitations showing up on my doorstep for my family to come to the country club either.
Right.
I mean, you're welcome to come over and be a waiter.
Exactly.
Or that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And to me, it comes down to degrees of oppression.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%.
I mean, the people who are in power, and we may have to hold another podcast on those people because I'll be angry doing that one.
Right.
They're stepping on everybody.
They are.
They're stepping on other people that are the same color as them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to get this out right now so nobody gets too angry. We're not even going to have an argument or discussion about whether or not the African Americans that were brought to this country as slaves and their descendants were crapped on way harder than other white people. Absolutely. There's not even a debate. People from where I'm from, Scots, Irish, English descent, a lot of us got shipped over here rather than go to jail over there.
Right.
For people who don't know their history, in Ireland in the 1840s during the potato famine, people were arrested as criminals and shipped off to Botany Bay, Australia, never to be seen again by their families simply for stealing corn to try to keep their kids from starving.
Right.
So yes, white people shit on other white people.
Right.
They do in a big way, and even more recent times. And you can have the same discussion about how migrant workers and immigrants are treated in this country to this day. And I may come back and take a quick detour into that. But African Americans were enslaved, and even after slavery ended, state and local government officials still did things to keep them from being free and have an opportunity and all that kind of stuff. And we won't even get into the depths of, the genocide committed on American Indians.
Right.
So let's just say that certain people in positions of power and wealth have used that to step on pretty much everybody who didn't have the same power and wealth for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind me taking a quick 2-minute side trip.
Oh, no.
When I was in first grade, living in rural Pennsylvania, there were 2 Hispanic girls that lived in a trailer on a farm, a quarter mile off the road. They would magically show up late in the summer, and they would go to school with us for the first half of the year, and by Thanksgiving or something, the whole family disappeared. They're gone.
That was every year?
Every year. Up until about 3rd or 4th grade. And they were coming and going with the crops. They would move other places. Their father basically was a migrant worker. So I saw them in 1st grade, saw them in 2nd grade, all the way to 4th grade, and by 5th grade they weren't coming back anymore. They were living somewhere else.
Right.
So I'm 60 years old. So I'm telling you that your government has been failing to deal with the immigration problem for my entire life.
Right.
And that we have a whole class, mostly of Latino, Central American and Mexican workers, who are basically living in indentured servitude in our country today. And you have to ask yourself, whether it's Republican or Democrat, whoever's in charge, why have we not been able to come up with an immigration policy that treats these people like human beings and recognizes their economic impact on our country? Because it doesn't suit the people in power. And don't be fooled by the Democratic and the Republican labels. There's people who are rich and powerful, and there are people that ain't.
Well, yeah. Because even with that, I think we had something before. Because I said to you that it's very interesting how you had the same views. Because again, I have a lot of these type of conversations with my son, to where it's funny because he was talking about doing a podcast sometimes, and we've been writing down like topics and stuff. But we can bring those topics here, and he can come sit in, and we can have, because a lot of the stuff you say, I'll go to him, and I won't even say anything about you yet, right? I'll just be like talking to him, we'll be talking, and I'll be like, oh, so let me ask you this, what do you think if this, or this, and I'll see what you say, right? He said, that's what I've been trying to tell you the whole time, Dad. And I said, well, guess who said that to me? And then he'd be like, oh, and I tell him you. And then, so now I've been saying that to him a lot. He's starting to be like, well, maybe I need to meet him.
And then, isn't it amazing when your kids grow up how dumb you are? Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, all of a sudden you're the dummy. You know what I'm saying? Right.
So we're going to do an episode of this where your son and my son is sitting here. We're going to turn those two loose.
Let them talk.
Because like we talked last time,
Uh-huh.
and people want to make it about race or make it about gender, or whether you're gay or straight or whether you're a Christian or a Muslim or whatever it is. I think everybody starts at every day you wake up, you got to survive. You don't think about it, but job number one every day is just keep yourself alive.
It is.
And then try to build to the place where you're enjoying your life and doing things you want to do. But I said to you last time, it's like we keep saying, oh, we're gonna make this change. We're gonna elect this person. It's gonna be better. No, we're gonna elect that person. It's gonna be better. This party's in charge. It's gonna be better. It's like everybody thinks there's a finish line. Like we're gonna get to this place and go, everything's gonna be perfect and equal and just and fair, and then the world's gonna be perfect. Never gonna happen.
Yeah.
And I said to you, human relations like the weather.
Oh, yeah.
It's a never-ending
Yeah.
series
Yeah.
of pressures. And sometimes when all the different components are putting their pressure against each other, you have some stormy days.
Right.
You have some violence. You have some unrest. And then when the weather clears, you have some nice days. But the bottom line is, if you don't push, you're not applying your pressure to that equation, then you get blown away.
Exactly.
And it's almost like now that we've reached a point where there's a certain segment of society that has the ability to put on more pressure than the rest of society put together. And there's like this spreading hopelessness. And we've then taken the hopeless masses and allowed the people who are running the media and everything to build walls between us. Lester, you're the cause of Rick's pain. Rick's the cause of your pain. Hate each other.
And
Thoughts on that?
Yep, and to keep us, keep that wall up so that we can come together as one to say, hold on, no, we're not the problem, you're the problem. Right? And again, what made me bring my son up was because of just exactly that, because he's like, in his mind, he's like, he says the same thing, Democrat, Republicans, whatever you want to call it, he says it's like all of them do enough or say what they want you to hear to get in position. Then when they get in there, they may do some of it, but those walls that you talked about, he said they still stay there, just to keep us against each other.
And I say this to a lot of people. People don't want to hear it. It's our fault. We allow ourselves to be bought. And I don't know if I told you this when we talked a couple weeks ago, but Pew Research does polls all the time. And they got one of their polls, basically, for the first year or so after 9/11, Congress had a high approval rating. For like the last 18 years in a row, the highest, Congress's approval rating hovers between 15 and 25%. People think they're doing a good job. So 3/4 or more of the public says, Congress is not doing a good job.
Right.
But at the same time, 60+% of people think that their congressperson and their senator are doing a good job.
Right.
And this goes to what you just said more about, they give you enough.
Right.
So they come back and they make a big show of, look at the money I brought back to the district. We're going to get these streets paved. We're going to build a new park. We're going to do this. And you guys really wanted this thing, so we got the money for that. And everybody goes, my guy or lady, they're good.
Right.
Why do you have so many problems in the country? Everybody else, those people are out there.
Right.
So they've got it set up to buy us.
That's true.
And tell people, you know why we have such a huge deficit? Because no elected representative can come home and stand in front of their constituency and say, well, you had more taxes taken out of you than I brought money back to you. They all have to be able to go home and say, you were taxed 10 whatever, but I brought you back 12.
Right.
And the only way to do that is to deficit spend.
That's it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the debt is only going to grow and grow and grow and grow. But these people are playing you. They are straight up playing you. The next 15 minutes here, I'm going to set the stage for future conversations here. Because back to the white privilege part of this and what happened to you, when we talked before, arranging this, like, it really comes back to like some old sayings that we've all heard. I don't care whether you go up in a black neighborhood or white neighborhood. Sometime in your life, somebody said, "So you know."
Yeah.
So you, and from the time my kids could understand English, I said, "So you know, meet as many people as you can. So you know, meet as many people as you can." And people go, "Well, that's not right." And I go, "Yeah, but." So you and me and your son, we're walking down the street somewhere, right? And all of a sudden, this car comes screaming down the street, and it's out of control, and it's coming right at me and your son, and you've got time to grab one person. Who you reaching for?
Grab my son.
Damn straight. I would too. You reflexively take care of the people who are close to you, and the people who are part of that you know about. You know them, and then because it's. And I probably need to bring a psychotherapist, someone here who teaches all this, but somewhere deep down inside, it's like just reflexive. And so your point, you have no idea in your situation going for that job, who did this guy know? Is it just that that he's white? It might be. Maybe there's a racist there working at the department going, well, I'm gonna bring this Lester guy in here, and I got 2 jobs, but I'm gonna kick this guy up here.
Right.
Because either I know his dad or I know his uncle, or because I'm white and he's white. It could be any of that stuff. And the problem for poor white kids like me, inner city African American terms like that, you don't know anybody.
Right.
There's nobody out there looking, nobody out there with the financial and the political clout looking to be your mentor or mine.
Exactly.
And it makes our mountain, where those kids, their mountain is that steep. Ours is like that.
Exactly. Right.
And I'm not gonna lie, if you're black, it's like that.
Yep. And the angle you got it, if you don't work hard, it's going to stay there or get worse. It's never going to come down because you're not. Like I heard you say earlier, you said about your son, like he knows so many people that when he went on this trip, he stayed at a hotel at no times because it's who he knew.
Right. Everywhere he went, there's some place to stay because he built relationships.
Right.
And that's kind of the point of this. You and I have had a cyber relationship. It's becoming personal now. Is you need to build relationships. You need to sit down and talk with people that aren't like you. Because I don't know what it's like growing up as a kid in PG County.
Right.
I don't know. I will never know what it's like to be driving in my car, see a cop slide in behind me, and have to worry about what's going to happen because I'm black. I ain't got to worry about it.
Right.
And I mean, I Lester grew up in a town where everybody knew everybody.
Okay.
The cops, we had both white and black cops in the local police force, and I think the size of the town, I think there might have been 8 cops total in the town. But the black cops on the force, my father and my uncles went to school with them, you know? So like when one of them pulled us over, and they did, and they caught us on stuff we weren't supposed to do, they'd be like, look, dumbass.
Right.
Get your ass home. I don't want to see you out on the streets anymore tonight. If I catch you with beer again, I'm going to tell your parents, blah, blah, blah. And that's that.
Right.
And that's the way it was.
Right.
And it, I feel really lucky because it didn't matter what color you were. They all knew each other.
Right.
And then I knew that same black cop was going to see my father and my uncle at a local bar later on that week and go, you know what your dumbass son was doing this week?
Right.
And it wasn't anything racial about it.
Right.
In high school, I had a sister who was 3 years younger than me. So like I was a senior in high school, my brother was a junior, she was a freshman.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And there was a black kid in one of her classes that sat behind her, and he kept like hitting her in the head with stuff, so I punched her in the back of the class and all sort of kind of stuff. Who knows? You probably liked her for all
that.
You know?
At that age, that's probably what it is.
You're dumb. You're just dumb.
Right.
And it never stopped. It didn't stop. And finally, you know, she's like getting all upset, coming home every day. And I'm like, all right, got to do something about this. But I was at least, you know, savvy enough to go, we ain't going to let this turn into something racial. We're just going to say, this kid's a dumbass and somebody needed to scare him.
Right.
So there's one other guy, I won't name anybody's name, this is our guy I'd known since like the 5th grade, black guy, like 6'6", big, one of the basketball stars. I come to him and said, man, here's the deal. This is what's going on, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, I said, I'm not going to hurt him, just go scare him a little bit. He's like, cool.
Right.
So we knew this kid, we knew what the schedule was, we knew every day he was going to come out a certain time and go in his bathroom. And me and my brother are waiting. We're hanging out, he goes in there, we went in, didn't hurt him, scared him a little bit, had him up against the wall, you know, made him pee his pants, that kind of thing, like that. And just came back out, and you know, my friend, the senior black guy, just looked at him and said, it's done. It's done.
It was finished, right?
He's like, cool, done. And then he got a hold of the guy. You stupid. What are you doing?
Right, like why?
And here's the message of that stupid little story from my past. You communicated and you showed respect.
Exactly.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it. Instead of just charging in there and punching up, and then it becomes a racial
Yeah,
thing.
because if y'all did that, that would have been the first thing they thought.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
These two guys, big black guy, like why? Yep.
I did that because I remember, and you, I don't know how old you are now, but I was like
I'll be 53.
8 years old, so you were born about this time when they had all the riots in '68, the Watts riots and riots all over the country, race riots. And I remember that, and I remember them sending us home from school early and all this other stuff. And when I'm like, reached the point where I'm like, okay, I've heard enough about this knucklehead, something has to happen. I'm like, well, I don't want to be the guy that starts the next.
Not this time.
So I'm going to talk to the guys who are the unquestioned leaders.
Right.
You know, he just needs to be scared. You know, he needs to learn how to treat a young lady, not smack him around. Yeah. And the way it was handled, everybody was cool. And I saw the kid in school a couple of days later. I'm like, we're good now. He's like, good. I said, don't hit girls, man.
Right.
You don't hit girls.
Right. Yep.
That's it.
Yep. That's a good story.
It's just like.
Yep. I had one similar. I know we weren't getting time, but it's like when I was at Bladensburg, it was a lot of the MS-13 game was there, and so they did a thing on. They were doing a thing on certain schools, so I got a skit. It was like a 30-minute thing about the school and what we're trying to do in the program and stuff like that. So long story short, what happened is I had told the Hispanic population, because I had the school was 50%, like it was like 45% black, like 45% Hispanic, and then the rest was like, white or others like that. So for me to build a football team, I had to get the Hispanics to want to play football. Right. So I said to them, when the thing I told them, I told them that if they teach me Spanish, I'll teach them football. American football.
Clever.
Yeah, like that, right? So a lot of them, brought to that. Like I talked about the relationships. Yeah. I was building a relationship with them, let them know that I want to be, I'm here, you here, I want to become part of your culture. So long story short, this one guy came out, couldn't speak hardly no English at all, right? His mother could speak just a little bit, and he was a big kid. He was like 6'4", like 280, right? Whoa. And he came out to start playing. He got hurt, so he couldn't play. So, but me and him built the relationship. So one day we would get to come. The football team would come up for practice. The soccer team was practicing already. The soccer team mostly was Hispanic. And I look up and I see like 40 guys coming around the corner, like all Hispanic. So now I'm looking at my friend. Nobody said, what's going on? He said, oh, they're coming to get somebody, right? So they got by the fence, and lo and behold, I saw him. So I called him over real quick, right? And I asked him, and I said, what's going on? And then he just looked at me. I said, what's going on? He pointed to somebody on the soccer field like that. So I knew something happened prior. So I just looked at him, and I was like, please, not now, like that, right? And he looked at me, and he was like, Coach, he nodded his head. And he turned around and said something, and they all left. So I'm just bringing that to say that when you talk about like how you stop something from happening with that, right? It's like because you evidently had a relationship with this guy enough to be able to go to him and him not say, man, forget you, white boy. And so building relationships like that can deactivate or de-escalate a lot of situations where it goes back to like the cop in Atlanta.
I think it's respect and communication because it didn't need to be bigger than it was. It didn't need to be anything than what it was. Right. If I could just say one thing to sum that whole piece up there is just because a black man and a white man have a beef, don't mean it's about race.
Not at all.
Exactly.
Not at all. Not at all.
Because let me tell you, like I got 2 daughters. You smack one of them, I don't care what color you are.
It don't matter.
It ain't gonna make any difference because I'm coming for it.
It does not matter. Yep.
But what I want to try to help people understand too is like different backgrounds. Like, so some of the kids I grew up with, we had a rough background. We were living out in this rural area where things are handled a certain way. Mm-hmm. But then I'll come back to this school, Darby Township. I remember when I was a junior, we were in there at their place playing a game, and they were great. They went like 12-0, man. And I think we were the only team all year to score 2 touchdowns against them in a game, and one of them was a blocked punt. I don't think we were real good. We blocked the punt score. But during the game, I mean, somebody got shot in the street behind the stands.
Okay.
And we're playing a little game. There's like a timeout. You look over, and there's cop cars everywhere and like that. And I looked at somebody on the sidelines and I said, "What's going on?" They said, "Oh, somebody got shot over there." And this one kid, like I played wide receiver and defensive back, and they had already called a play, and the refs called timeout for something. I'm looking across this kid that I'm going to cover,
Right.
And I'm like, "Holy shit!" He's like, "Man, every day, man."
Yeah. Yep.
And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm in your world now, and
Right.
this is normalized to you. You're a 16, 17-year-old kid, and people getting shot right outside your school ain't nothing.
Right. I'm not sure if you're at the school in Baltimore, St. Francis.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And like the other one's Dunbar. So,
Yeah.
So when I was at Blade,
Everybody knows Dunbar.
yeah, when I was at Blade, we would go scrimmage Dunbar, and just two of the same things. I know they're in different areas of Baltimore, but we were at Dunbar, and I think the same thing kind of happened. It was 4 teams there. It was, and 3 of the teams were from, but 2 were black, us, Dunbar and us, and then it was a private school, and then it was a white school from I can't come kind of where from. But same thing happened. We were right in the middle of the game, and like it was not funny, but it was interesting because when the shots went off, it was we were going against the private school kids, and Dunbar was going against the white school. When the shots went off, right in the middle, because the plays were going on, our kids kept going, and Dunbar's kids kept going. Everybody else was like stopping, and we was like, "Why y'all?" The referee didn't blow the whistle or nothing. He's like, "What's going on?" And then, but that was a prime example that certain kids were used to that environment, right?
I'm not laughing because gunshot. I'm laughing because there's a lesson in American sociology right there in those few seconds when the gunfire started.
Right in front. And then real quick with St. Francis, they did a 4-series story on their players because they rank like national, as y'all know, like in the nation. And within the show, the coach was at the end of practice. He was talking to them. They were all on their knees, and he was talking to them and stuff. And you could hear pop, 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 pop. And not one kid moved, and then once the pops went off, the coaches started talking again. So when people would for me, I seen that, but I'm just wondering like you were saying, like who else was watching this would realize that these kids didn't even budge, which means, like you say, that's every day to them.
Background noise, isn't it?
That's all it is.
That's sobering, man. That's sobering.
Yep.
And people who don't know the rest of the story of St. Francis is the guy who coaches the team. Used to coach at Boys Latin or Gilman, very high end, very expensive private school. And I think this guy was like a hedge fund manager, something in the investment committee. Guys worth a lot of money.
He owns a lot of properties.
And he's built up this program to the point where they went from, literally when he first started, they were practicing in the street. They were practicing in a parking lot. They'd come out and sweep the glass out of it for these kids to practice.
Yeah.
But then they started leveling everybody.
Right, and he was using his own money.
Yep, using his own money.
Right.
And then the Maryland private schools conference, basically everybody refused to play them.
They're not playing them no more. It's not fair because they get to recruit. Well, y'all get to recruit too. The only difference is he's just housing them, and then it goes to, like you're saying, here's a white man, right, a wealthy white man, right, that's taken to. And again, he coached Gilman, which is probably whites and Boys Latin. He took it upon himself to look to say, "Oh, something needs to be done here with these kids." Right? So somebody's gonna come in. I'm sure somebody's gonna say to him, "Oh, why are you supporting these black kids?" What is he getting out of it? He's spending his money. He's putting them in college. He ain't getting no kickback for putting them in college.
How many kids going through his program that got to go to college to get an education that would never? Let's be honest, they'd be in jail or dead.
They'd be in jail or dead.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So and we've been going at this for almost an hour, and broaden out for a few minutes here. Is when we get back together again, I would really like to get into the roots of you're a kid growing up in one of these neighborhoods. How does it go? I mean, explore the mindset of a child who's. Let's be honest. A lot of them are in single-family homes. Their mothers out there. If a lot of these kids come and say if they thank their moms because their mom been working 3 jobs, and you got an 8-year-old at home looking after a 2, 3, and a 4-year-old, and then people wonder how these kids end up getting involved in the drug trade and stuff like that. Well, your mom's killing herself, and some guy says, "Yeah, here, Lester, here's $100. Take this bag and take it down the car and hand it to that guy in the car. Stop, come back out here Tuesday. You can make some more money."
Exactly.
Next thing you know, this kid is watching his mother kill herself. All of a sudden, you can go, "Here, Mom. Here's some money. Here's some money."
Right.
You know,
Yep.
and then you start to see how people get sucked into things because I'm gonna come back to you. Survival's first.
Exactly.
You know what? If you're worried about the light staying on, having to eat, having food,
You survive.
you're gonna do what you gotta do.
What you gotta do. Yep.
And then people can get all holier than thou and righteous about, oh, you're feeding the drug trade, you're killing other people. I'm sorry. I'm 60 years old. There've been dumbasses doing drugs my entire life. And these government programs come and go and come and go and come and go, and they're still doing it.
Still doing it.
And that there is a growing sadness, hopelessness, apathy. There is something in the human spirit that has been lost in our society that leads a lot of people to try to medicate, to cure it, to just feel good for a while.
Yep.
And until we figure out how to take care of that problem, the drug problem ain't going away, the crime problem ain't going away. The kids aren't going to get better educated. Ain't nothing going to get fixed.
Nope. All they're doing is putting a Band-Aid on it, and just to say, okay, heal it for a little while, and then take the Band-Aid off, but not, you know.
And when we get back, we can talk about failures of governments, failures of political parties, failures of the schools, failures of parents, failures of friends to step in and try to help when they should. Everybody's so afraid to do anything anymore.
They sure are. Yep.
You know, and I tell people's like, oh, you're gonna do this, people. I don't care what you say to me.
Right.
I'm old. I'm already chronologically canceled. Ain't nobody cares what I say anyway.
Yeah.
But me and this gentleman are going to speak our truth to each other.
Constantly.
And if you want to bash us, level up, man. Come at
Comment. Please comment.
Please comment.
Yeah. Comments bring more comments.
Because we have to break down the barriers between the various, not ethnic, racial, you know, whatever the divisions are. It's only going to get fixed by conversations like these, where people just say what they say. And for the last hour, we've just relayed stories about football and how we grew up and stuff like that. And you know, we're going to try to keep it light, but we're going to get into what problems do we see as two grown men looking at our government and looking at how our society is structured and looking at our young people and going, how do we get to the point where your son and my son and our grandchildren down the road, this isn't even something they got to think about.
Right, exactly.
They're just treating each other like people. And I'm going to get corny for a second. White people, black people, brown people, yellow people, they're all people.
Period. Yep.
And, you know, I'm just sick of sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah. I mean, like when you look at kids playing together, they play. They don't look at color. They don't look at anything. They play. It's when they start getting older, for some reason. I don't know if it's like how the environment, the parent, the government, whoever, their school, their church, somebody is getting them in the mindset of, damn, oh, he's white, I'm black, we can't be friends. I can't hang around you, I won't hang around you. You know what I'm saying? And that's where the problem comes in. So it's something, it ain't how it gets fixed. Like you asked me one time before, I don't know, but
I know this. When I was like 6 or 7 years old, we lived in this house in the countryside. My parents didn't have enough money to buy a house until I was like 12 or 13 years old. And only then because they got a really good deal from a guy who just wanted to get rid of this house. It wasn't much of a house, but that kind of deal. But we had these 4 big maple trees in our front yard, this house we were in, right? And the big thing in the neighborhood was just climb the trees. Everybody, all the kids like to climb the trees. So we live right here. Up the road this way, quarter mile, was the two little Hispanic girls that I mentioned before. And then literally up the street, there was a Mennonite family. If you're familiar with Mennonite, it's sort of like Amish light.
Oh, right.
They can drive cars and stuff like that, but from that same kind of sect. And this is a good picture, you know. It's a diagonally across the street, 2 houses up in America. This is a rural area, like there's farms around this and stuff. Was a trailer, mobile home. And then it lived an African American man and his 4 sons. He was a single father, right? So, and 2 of the kids were really little, and the other 2 were like my age, my brother's age. And we would go out, like our family would always go visit my grandparents on a Sunday. So we come home in summertime on a Sunday, you know, when the trees are in full bloom and everything. We come back pulling in the driveway. Kids in neighborhoods are climbing our trees.
Right.
You got the Mennonite kids and the black kids climbing the trees.
Right.
Like we bolt out of the car, we go climb trees too.
Right.
And to what you just said, we were all friends.
Right.
It didn't matter.
Right.
I don't even know what the hell Mennonite was, man.
Right.
All I know is they were cool. They were fun to hang out with. They all climbed trees.
Yep.
The black kids across the street, they're black kids.
Yep.
It was just Jeff and Kevin, man.
Right.
We hung out
That was
stuff,
it. Right.
You know? And then somewhere along the line, we learn behavior. And to me, I think a lot of it is born from the frustration, looking at being poor and not having.
Right.
And then as you get up through the middle school and high school, you're looking around and you see these other kids that got everything.
Right.
And you got nothing.
Right.
And you start going, WTF.
Right. Yep.
Why is this?
Yep.
And then tell me if you disagree, but you start doing the common denominator thing. Well, wait a minute. I'm seeing more black kids and more of these kind of, and the Hispanic people and more of these like poorish kind of white people that don't have what they have.
Right, exactly.
And then like the resentment starts to build.
Yep. And then you become that angry player you was talking about that was on the football field.
Yeah.
Yep.
Why is my mom got to scrub your toilet?
Right.
What's that about?
Exactly. Yep.
And then you get those parents who are frustrated with their own lives, because if you're a teenager and you're aware, they're sure as hell aware.
Oh yeah.
And they're frustrated with where their lives are at and decisions they made, and they ain't happy.
Yep.
And they ain't being good parents.
Nope. Not. Yep.
So now you're looking around and you're not feeling like you've got what you should have, and you're not feeling like you're getting what you should be getting from the people who are supposed to nurture
Right.
you.
Exactly. Yep.
And you got an angry young man who wants to play linebacker and break somebody's neck.
Exactly.
So,
and as a coach, you don't want that in society, but those are some of your best football players. So that's why you come in like me and you try to nurture them. And not nurture them, but try to help guide them to give them what they're missing.
to show them where the rails are, where
Exactly.
you know you got this violent part of your nature. You can keep it in here.
Yeah.
It's
What was the name of that movie? With Bobby Boucher, he was playing linebacker.
The Water Boy?
The Water Boy. That's a prime example of the Water Boy. He was pissed off. Don't talk about my mom.
So if you would do us the honor of getting together again,
Yes, that.
and we get, because we talked about the police a good bit here, and then some other things, but I like to kind of dive into like what the government has tried to do and how it's worked in your neighborhood, my neighborhood, other people, and any variety of subjects as far as how we move forward. I mean, we can sit here all day and we can spew out here what the problems are, but where do the answers lie? What do people like you and me have to do? What does everybody have to do? Because anybody who sees this, who's sitting at home going, "Oh, well, I pay my taxes, they should do this,"
Right.
Ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna get it done, man.
Nope.
Ain't gonna get it done.
Nope.
If you don't care enough to do something that like Lester and I are willing to sit here and do and put ourselves out here, you only got to do a podcast.
Right.
But for God's sakes, talk to somebody who's not like you.
Exactly.
And let's see where we can get to from here. So, Lester, absolute pleasure, man.
I enjoyed
I
this.
look forward to the next one.
Oh,
Till
most
next
definitely.
time, Rick Carter, Lester Overton. We're just two guys on the plane, man.
Guys on the plane.
Be good.
Take care.